Alongside some of the area's most modern buildings, by far the most striking sight on Salford Quays is the Imperial War Museum North. The award-winning building was designed by the architect Daniel Libeskind and represents our world torn apart by conflict. The museum's work is focused on people and their stories, about how lives have been and are still shaped by war and conflict. The museum have just launched a brand new exhibition which focuses purely on the work of female war artists. Now, a little bit later in the programme, we're going to be talking to one of the curators who had the fascinating job of researching their lives. But we're also going to take the opportunity to link to a brand new gallery in Manchester called Artland, whose current exhibition brings us up to date as it focuses on photographs of the Iraq conflict. But first off today, and to a brand new piece of theatre. It's a co-production between the Manchester-based Weeding Cane and Contact Theatre. Song of Songs is a love story told through the eyes of its female lead characters, and the theatre piece itself promises to be a mixture of live performance and dance.
They say it feels if you let it. Love was made to forget.
The first show that I wrote and produced was called Weeding Cane, and it started off at the Green Room and then went on to the Royal Exchange studio and then did a tour. And from then I worked with a producer called Richard Morgan, and we're Weeding Cane. And I'm the artistic director and he's the producer. It's hard to do a synopsis of this show because it's really about the women in the show. So in terms of its journey of making the piece, it started when I was in my 30s and I hadn't really had a long-term relationship. So I wanted to know what is it that we're all looking for, and somehow I can't get it. I did a sort of series of arty experiments where I went on blind dates and stuff like that, and there was a show that came out of that which was here called Conversations on Love, and I did another show at the Nuffield Theatre in Lancaster called Keep Me Warm, where I gathered lots of stories, people's love stories, real love stories. So this show, in terms of explaining it, is kind of a continuation of that, of people having a conversation. So it's a big conversation with the audience as well as the individual people in the show, their real life and love stories. Everybody's interested in love. Everybody wants to know, everybody thinks about it and chats about it. It's so fundamental to human beings that probably, one way or another, anything you look at probably has love at the heart of it. So it's just universal. For a while I thought about having a man in it, and we had a man in it for a bit. But I think it's interesting, just the female story, and I don't know that much about men, and I know women, you know, when you're with your girlfriends, you talk about love, you talk about men, you talk about women, you talk about love, so women is what I'm interested in at the moment, yeah.
Please forgive me, 'cause your hand.
The uniqueness of it is the fact that they are real stories of real people rather than a made-up fictional narrative. Also that we have actors and non-actors, and we have a circus aerialist. So within it there's a woman called Vicky Amedime who will be doing some circus, which is part of the show. So that's, and there's also lots of people that the audience participation. So every night before the show we're having workshops, and the women who go to those workshops can be part of the show. They'll sit at the top table, and there's little things that they can do, not scary things, but little things that they do, and that will make the show much more than just 4 people performing. It's just all of us performing. It's also just trying to get more people's voices talking about love, not just the fluffy stuff of love, but the real side and the difficult side and the real longing, but also, and the reality of it. So it's very important that there's more than just the 4 people on the stage. It's more about, we've all got a story to tell. I think music is really important to the show. I think a lot of people can mark their journey through love via various songs. You can quite easily ask, do you remember a time when you broke up with X? Can you remember what song were you playing? Yes, I can remember. Do you remember the first song you danced with Y with? Yes, I remember. And so I think songs really kind of mark very deep emotional journeys for us. So that's why songs are important in the show.
Song of Songs will be at Contact Theatre until the 21st of February. Now, fans of the Roots duo, Show of Hands, will be no strangers to its frontman, Steve Knightley, who has, of course, been touring his solo work for many years. And Bury Met is one of the venues that he regularly visits. Now, we went up there to meet Steve and to find out about his brand new album, which takes him back to his first album that he recorded over 10 years ago. Steve, thanks so much for having a talk to us this evening. First of all, tell me a little bit about this album, Track of Words Retraced, because you're going back to your first album, aren't you?
Well, 10 years ago, I still bought into this idea that you could make a radio-friendly record from this genre, this acoustic roots folk genre, however you want to call it. So I came up with a body of songs, and we sort of did a lot to them. And it took it a bit away from the acoustic feel that I feel most at home with. So 10 years later, I ended up with this body of songs, and I didn't have them in a format that I could really go out and tour. And also the voice has got deeper and gravelier. I've moved stuff down a few keys, and the 10 years in between, there's sort of lots of life stuff going on. And I think I could invest the songs with a bit more gravitas, as it were.
And has touring made a difference too?
Yeah, it does. It's where you find out whether the material connects to people. Because you never really know. I mean, I haven't really solidly toured this much of material, you know, so it feels quite confessional sometimes, but I've got better at what I do anyway. You know, in 10 years, your stagecraft improves and the general sort of little techniques you have for engaging an audience, so I'm quite confident driving these songs along.
Now, Show of Hands are coming up to the Lowry on the 19th of April. Tell us a little bit about what fans can expect from that show. We
thought we'd do some solo features during the first half, so people can hear new material. I can do something from Track of Words, Phil can do something from his box set album or whatever, Miranda can do something. And then the second half will be the festival set, you know, the big, brash and noisy festival set. And that should give everybody a bit of everything, really.
Where do you think that the folk or root scene is now? It was a very different scene, say, 20 years ago.
It's never been so cool, in a way, because of people like Seth and Kate Rusby and Jim Moray, and there's a whole generation of young performers who definitely have attitude and a look.
I can hear a cooling.
Technically, they are 10 years ahead of we were when we were that age. But the dilemma is there are less places to play. So you have this sort of bottleneck, really, a lot of talent out there, technically brilliant, often the offspring of folk revivalists. So it's in their genes, it's in their wiring. You know, there's a real authenticity about them that you get in Irish musicians. They've heard this in the womb, you know. But where do you play? You know, in the Celtic scene, you can play in your local pubs, you can play in your local bars. You know, there is an outlet. And if you get good enough, you go effortlessly into the concert and the festival scene. But in England, those avenues aren't there to the same extent. So that's a problem.
Your heart on quiet hillsides, and every breeze you've ever heard will join the silent trek of words. Choose a word like friendship, family, community, safe haven. Hey, hey, where have you been, my blue-eyed son?
Steve Knightley's new album, Track of Words Retraced, is available from all good stockists. And he's going to be joined by his partner in crime, Phil Beer, when Show of Hands bring their next tour over the water there to the Lowry on the 19th of April. Well, that's your lot for part one of the programme, but don't go anywhere, because coming up after the break, we're going to be paying homage to a megastar who's returning to our city after 5 years and whose ticket prices are certainly beating the credit crunch. Welcome back to CityLife and to this incredible building, home to the Imperial War Museum North. Coming up in just a moment, we're going inside to find out more about their latest exhibition that focuses on the work of women war artists. But first off to the cinema, and we're going to take a look first at the latest craze in 3D film. By no means a new invention, the first patent for 3D cinema was filed back in the 1890s. But films like the latest Disney animation, Bolt, rely on a completely different technology, and with the film's creators specifically constructing the action with a 3D experience in mind.
You tell him his old friend Bolt said he better...
Is it long?
Is what long?
The message? Is it a long message? Because I have a horrible memory.
35mm has been around for over 100 years, and it's just recently that digital has come into the fore. Which with a digital projector here in the Odeon Printworks. We're showing both 3D currently. Digital projection differs very much from 35mm because it doesn't require any physical film. So this is done through two images of the same picture shown over each other. It's shown in two different colours. One's red, one's green. And the glasses that you wear in the screen, one side will block out a particular colour, and the white side shows it, and vice versa, and thus creating two different images which kind of meld together to bring that lovely 3D.
No, I don't know. I thought I knew.
3D done right is a more immersing feel because you do feel a lot more part of the actual movie itself. But it's also, I think, about just pushing technology and seeing what they can get out of it all. But yeah, the actual cinema goer will just gain so much more of an experience from watching the 3D movie than just the regular on-screen 2D movie.
Bolt's producer, John Lasseter, is credited with the hugely successful Toy Story. While Bolt isn't really in the same league of storytelling, the technology used to create this film places him amongst the great innovators of modern animated film.
Initiating escape! Hey! Live! Lock the door! Lock the door! Lock the door! Lock the door! Super Bark! Super Bark!
My choice from this week's new releases is Notorious. It tells the story of the short but incredible life of the American rapper Biggie Smalls, real name Christopher Wallace. Now, what makes this film unique is that his mother has co-produced it. It also includes some incredible performances from the likes of Angela Bassett and Jamal Woolard.
I pray all this East Coast, West Coast mess is over now. I saw his mother on TV. She's a strong woman. But no parent should have to bury their child.
I just always figured we had time to straighten things out.
You don't think this had anything to do with your argument?
Nah. I don't.
Well, nobody is invincible, son. That's why we have to make everything we do now count.
The death of Notorious B.I.G. will remain a mystery, and don't expect this film to uncover any secrets for you. In fact, music purists might find that the story doesn't quite go far enough, telling it in enough detail. But it does contain some incredible performances, like I said, but including Christopher Wallace Jr., the star's real son, who plays him as a young boy.
How's work today?
Every day you ask me how I'm doing. What's that about?
It's 'cause I care. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. Whatever you say, Big Papa.
You got a smart-ass mouth.
You gonna do something about it? I ain't think so.
Hold up. You want to get something to eat?
Women War Artists is the first exhibition in 50 years to bring together not only the Imperial War Museum's unique collection, but also the personal experiences of the artists involved. Roughly, it shows a timeline from the First World War to the Kosovan conflict in the year 2000, and it gives all of us the opportunity to see some of this incredible collection.
Women artists, like male artists, were recording the war. There was official commissions because it was recognised that there was a need for war art to officially record what was going on in a different medium than photography. So women were officially commissioned to do that, but also women artists would just happen to be working, and the war was such a major thing that it was natural that they would want to record it and make a lasting record of it because it was affecting their daily lives. And the sort of things that women were recording and painting and drawing were possibly the sort of subjects that male artists at the time wouldn't have considered or wouldn't have thought were worthy of record. I really enjoyed researching the artists' lives and just finding out some of these really interesting characters and some of the different ways they came to be producing war art. The differences between somebody like Dame Laura Knight, who was a really famous artist at the time where she was commissioned to record heroic women, compared to somebody like Margaret Abbess, who was working in secret while she was just doing a sort of a standard everyday job in a factory.
Dame Laura Knight was brought up in impoverished conditions. Her father died when she was very young, and it was her mother who taught her to draw and paint. After joining the Nottingham School of Art at just 13, 1 year later her mother was diagnosed with cancer and died 4 years later. During the interim period, Laura won more art awards than any other woman in Britain.
Laura moved to London and worked extensively on circus and ballet subjects. By the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, she was the most important woman artist in Britain. She was asked to paint a series of commissions of war heroines by the War Artists Advisory Committee.
At the end of the war, she sought permission to paint the war crime trials at Nuremberg, making her only one of 3 women war artists commissioned to travel abroad to record the war.
I picked these works because they're my personal favourites. I just really like the style of them. And the artist Margaret Abbess only gave them to the museum in 2007, and it's a really interesting story, the way they came to the museum, because she was actually just about to throw them away. She was having a big clear out at home, and she'd found them out, and she showed them to her granddaughter and said, "Oh, look at these." And her granddaughter said, "Oh, they're beautiful and they're amazing." She said, "Oh, I was thinking of throwing them away." And she said, "No, you must show them to the Imperial War Museum. They might be interested in them." And she did. She brought them to the museum and showed them to the art curators, and they loved them, and she gave them to the museum. And so this is the first time they've actually been on display. She was doing them when she was working in an aircraft components factory in the Second World War. She'd actually trained as an artist, and when the war broke out she was just about to actually go to art college, but she actually then had to just go and work in a factory instead. So while she was working there, she obviously wanted to carry on drawing, so she did these drawings mostly secretly. Just in her workplace she'd find odd moments, pop out to the loo or sort of go on a tea break, or just sort of hide it behind what she was doing and just sort of record her daily life. So they actually show a series of her working day, so going to the factory, arriving at the factory, at work, and sort of on a tea break.
War photography during recent times is currently on display at Manchester's newest independent gallery, Artland, where for the first time the work of Christophe Banguette, the New York Times award-winning photographer, is currently on show. He was one of the very few Western photographers to stay the distance in Iraq during some of its most bloodiest and terrifying periods. The result is a series of shocking and extraordinary images.
I think the Iraq War is the war of my generation. I'm now 30 years old. I think this is what we today think about the Vietnam War will be the Iraq War in some years from now. So it's the defining conflict of my generation, and I had an urge as a journalist to document what is happening there. The biggest problem is still today kidnappings of foreigners and of Iraqis. So you have to be very careful where you go and when you go, how long you stay, and you have to be very careful not to endanger people you photograph by meeting them, because it can be very dangerous for Iraqis to meet with Westerners. I was embedded with the American Army several times, although I spent a lot of time independently working with the Iraqi civilians. There was one day I was embedded with the Americans, and I was riding in an armored fighting vehicle, and I took a picture of a little girl standing in the doorway looking at this huge tank-like vehicle passing her house, and in a way you can see the fear. This is one of the pictures where you can really see that I was with soldiers, and I was taking a picture out of a soldier's perspective, but I was not a soldier. But just that I'm with soldiers doesn't mean that I am one of them.
Women War Artists is going to be on display here at the museum until the middle of April, and Christoph's work can be seen at the new Artland Gallery until the middle of March. Well, that's it for this week, but I'm going to leave you in the company of a megastar who's making a return visit to Manchester after 5 years. Madonna's Sticky and Sweet tour has already grossed more than a solo performer's tour in history, and she's extending it and taking in Manchester. She'd already released the date of the 7th of July. She's now released a second date of the 8th of July. Until next week, all hail the Queen of Pop.